For as long as I could remember, I have had trouble with sleep paralysis. It started when I was way younger, around 7 to be exact. I remember that whenever I slept on my belly, which was often due to the fact that I had scoliosis, I would wake up and just not be able to move. At 7, this was really scary to me. Being awake and feeling active but not being able to move or talk was terrifying. Trying to force your body up but feeling like there was something holding you down was pretty nightmarish. As I got older, I began to get used to it, especially after learning pretty much everyone in my family suffered from it. I never had any experiences that were too creepy when I was growing up. Most were just me not being able to move, which I had gotten used to, but that all changed this fateful day. I was at a friend's house having a sleepover, and of course this is the day we decided to play with a ouija board. It wasn't a real board, just one we made out of cardboard, but we just wanted to test out our luck. We did this for about 15 minutes and nothing happened, which was annoying to us, but we just went on about our night. Hours later we finally decided to go to bed. I went to bed laying on my back this night because it was actually more comfortable than my stomach. I was pretty much dead asleep when I just felt this extreme pressure on my chest. I began to wake up, and as my eyes started to adjust to the darkness, I noticed there was something over me. As my eyes completely adjusted, I saw that there was this very pale lady sitting over me. Her skin was super pale, but her hair, eyes, and overall features looked dark and dead. She was sitting on my stomach just watching me. I instantly tried to sit up, but that's when I realized I was in a state of paralysis. I immediately started trying to wiggle my toes and fingers, which usually helped me, but on this day it just seemed like nothing was working. Usually after a few minutes of me wiggling my toes and fingers, my body would begin to wake up and things would go back to normal, but on this day I just felt my breathing slow down the more I did it. It was almost like the more I tried to escape the situation, the more I hurt myself. I had closed my eyes during all this to avoid contact with the woman, but after a few minutes of barely being able to breathe, I opened them. The woman had this sinister grin on her face, and it seemed like she had gotten closer to me. This is when I realized that this woman wasn't sitting on me. Her legs looked like they were embedded inside of my stomach. There was no blood or anything, but it almost looked like our bodies were attached, like we were conjoined twins. As she looked at me and grinned, she started moving her face closer and closer to mine. As this was happening, this red substance that looked like blood started coming from her mouth. It was dripping on my blanket the closer she got. I began to panic. I couldn't move or speak, but my heart was pounding in my chest as she got closer and closer. That's when all of a sudden the room door barged opened and my friend's mom entered. The lady instantly stopped and just froze in place as she looked at me. I saw his mom glance around the room before walking in. As she did, I silently tried to murmur help, but still being in a state of paralysis, it was no good. My friend's mom started walking towards me. She got directly in front of me, bent down and picked up a plate that I had left on the floor before exiting the room. I was completely dumbfounded. Could she not see this woman who was literally crushing me? The moment she left, the sinister grin appeared on the woman's face again. She was less than a few inches away from me at this point. She looked me straight in the eyes and just started laughing, this loud, sinister laugh. To me, the laugh was so loud that even the neighbors should have been able to hear it, but this was not the case. Even my friends who were laying directly beside me didn't hear it apparently. Once again my panic level went straight through the roof. I started wiggling my fingers and toes uncontrollably to try to wake my body. She noticed this and stopped laughing. She smiled at me again and began to get even closer. When she reached my forehead, I heard her whisper something in this deep, raspy voice. Then she kissed me on the head, and that's honestly all I can remember. I don't even remember falling asleep afterwards, just being kissed and everything going completely black. The next day I woke up and everything was normal. I sat up and honestly believed that I had a really bad nightmare. I got up and went to the bathroom to get ready. The second I looked in the mirror, I saw that on top of my forehead, exactly where she had kissed me, was this red burn mark that looked extremely agitated. All the events just ran through my head and I felt sick. I still do each and every time I think about it. I have no idea why any of this happened to me. I don't know if it was tied to the board or if my friend's house is haunted or something, but I do know that it wasn't a dream or hallucination. This event truly traumatized me. It took me almost a year to be comfortable enough to attend another sleepover. Almost everyone I told thought I was crazy or just paranoid, which really hurt me as a kid. I've tried to rationalize it way too long, and each and every time I've came to the same conclusion, so believe me if you want to or don't. But I have had an unexplained burn mark on my head for the last 12 years. The day anyone can explain how it got there is the day I'll change my beliefs.
Growing up, I had never believed in ghosts or spirits or anything of that category, but that all changed on one visit. My grandma lived in a nursing home most of my life as far as I could remember. On this particular week she was moved to a new nursing home and my parents basically forced me to stay with her for the weekend. While I loved my grandma, I wasn't very keen of the idea. It was nothing against her, of course, just would rather be home than in some weird nursing home. Day 1 on my visit everything pretty much went normal, but that night some weird stuff started to happen. I was laying on an air mattress talking to my grandma when she stopped talking mid-sentence. I looked over to her and saw her staring at her closet. I asked her if she was okay and she looked over to me and said, "There's a man in the closet." Frightened, I stood up slowly and walked toward the closet and peeked inside, but there was nothing there. "There's no one here, Granny," I said as I made it back to my bed. "You don't see him?" she asked. "He's smiling right at us." "How are you, young man? Would you like anything?" she said as she motioned toward the closet. My grandma was pretty old and suffered from a lot of conditions, so I just figured she was seeing things or had made an imaginary friend, so I let it go. That night as I was sleeping I kept waking up to my grandma talking to her new imaginary friend. I will admit it was somewhat creepy, but nothing that I felt was serious. The next day I woke up and Granny was acting strange. All day the topic was on Michael, her imaginary friend. She kept saying how he wanted to formally meet me and how he was just shy last night and so on. I continued to let everything she said slide because, like I said, I thought it was just in her head. Later that night it was bingo night at the home. I was tired, so I decided not to go. After Granny left I laid in her bed and slowly dozed off. After a while I woke up to what felt like someone tapping me. My eyes instantly jerked open but my body just wouldn't move at all. I had no experiences with sleep paralysis and at the time didn't even know what it was, so this was pretty scary. I started glancing around since that's pretty much all I could do, and that's when my eyes went straight to the closet and standing there was a dark creature-like silhouette. I couldn't move, so I simply stared at him to make sure he didn't come closer, which he didn't. It just stared at me without moving. The closet was dark so I couldn't see the overall facial features, but I could see that its face and body was weirdly shaped. It looked nothing like a regular human. I glanced away for maybe 5 seconds to try to see what was wrong with my body. When I looked back at the creature it was significantly closer to me. It was near the front of the closet at this point and I could somewhat see its face. The one thing that I remember was its huge grin as it stared at me. It was not some sly smile, it was a literal crazy grin you would see in a scary movie. I did not take my eyes off of the creature at this point, and after a minute or so my body awakened and I instantly stood up and ran out of the room. I remember as I ran past the closet the creature had his hand up waving at me and its smile was completely gone. I ran straight to the bingo room and told everyone what I saw. The workers came to check my granny's room but found nothing. Not even an indication that anyone beside us had been there. My parents came to pick me up early since I was really shaken and didn't want to stay there another night. They arrived and talked to my granny for a few minutes before saying it was time to go. As I was leaving, my granny grabbed my hand and hugged me before whispering, "Michael said it was nice to meet you." I pulled away from my grandma and just looked at her, and she just smiled and nodded at me. After arriving home I begged my parents to get my grandma out of the nursing home, and they actually did try, but my granny straight up refused to leave. She said she was happy there and my parents had no real say since she was in a good environment, so they quickly let it go. There was never any evidence of anything being found in my grandma's room and people quickly forgot about my report, but I know what I saw and I've never forgotten it. I still visit my grandma occasionally because it's been over 3 years since this incident happened. I have had no other experiences, but I just know she isn't alone in that room.